Hello and welcome. My name's Dojo Captain. Chances are, you're probably my nephews. They're 90% of my views on the couple of videos I have anyways, so I guess you can just call me Uncle Tommy. Today, this video is going to be something to fall asleep to, and basically dyslexic, I think, so I was going to edit all the parts out where I messed up, but I just decided not to. I figured I'd leave it in there, so if you happen to be awake when you hear those, don't think twice. I hope you enjoy it. Today, in this video, we're going to be reading the Haynes repair manual for the 2007 through 2013 Chevy Silverado. A lot of people have them, but the goal for this one is not to inform you, but maybe help you fall asleep. Got the lovely fireplace going over here. Got a nice, beautiful rain in the background. I think it might be everything we need here. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And good luck falling asleep. Alright, this will be the Chevy Silverado and the GMC Sierra 2007 through 2013. Two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. This repair manual is based on a complete teardown and rebuild. Let's go straight into Chapter 1. That's where it gets good. Right. Chapter 1. Tune-up and routine maintenance. Following are the recommended lubricants and fluids. Note, listed here are manufacturer recommendations at the time this manual was written. Manufacturers occasionally upgrade their fluid and lubricant specifications, so check with your local auto parts store for current recommendations. For engine oil, we're going to use an API certified for gasoline engines. The viscosity will be 5W30. The fuel, we're going to use unleaded gasoline, 87 octane minimum. The automatic transmission fluid, that'd be Dexron 6 automatic transmission fluid. For the transfer case, if your model is NVG261-NP2, that's the manual shift, you're going to use manual transmission fluid. The NVG246-NP8, that one's going to have auto track 2 fluid. For all others, use Dexron 6 automatic transmission fluid. Now moving on to the differentials. For the front 1500 series, you can use SAE 80W90 GL-5 gear oil. For the 1500 HD, 2500 HD, and 3500 series, you're going to use SAE 75W90 synthetic axle lubricant. Now for the rear, all of them are going to use SAE 75W90 synthetic axle lubricant. For the power steering fluid, we're going to just use GM power steering fluid. For brake fluid, we're going to use DOT3 brake fluid. For engine coolant, you're going to use a 50-50 mixture of Dexcool coolant and demineralized water. Parking brake mechanism grease. We're going to use white lithium-based grease, NLGI number 2. For chassis lubricant grease, we're going to use NLGI grade 2 LB or GC-LB chassis grease. For the hood, door, and trunk hinge lubricant, we're going to use Lubriplate lubricant aerosol spray. For the door hinge and check spring grease, we're going to use NLGI number 2 multi-purpose grease or equivalent. Key lock cylinder lubricant, it's going to be graphite spray. Hood latch assembly lubricant, try that again. Hood latch assembly lubricant, we're going to use, once again, NLGI number 2 multi-purpose grease or equivalent. And for the door latch lubricant, we're also going to use the NLGI number 2 multi-purpose grease or equivalent. Moving on to capacities. For engine oil, this is including the filter. For the V6 engine, you're going to use 4.5 quarts. For the V8 engines, you're going to use 6 quarts. For the automatic transmission, fluid and filter change, First off, we got the 4L60-E, the 4L65-E, and the 4L70-E. Those are each going to use 5 quarts. If you have the 6L50 or the 6L80, you're going to use 6 quarts. And the Behemoth 6L90 is going to use 6.3 quarts. On the differential. For the front, on the 4-wheel drive models, you're going to use up to 2 quarts. On the rear, if you have the 8.6-inch axle, you're going to use 2.2 quarts. For the 9.5-inch and 10.5-inch axles, 2.75 quarts. For the 11.5-inch axle, you're going to use 3.2 quarts. For the transfer case, the NVG 261-MP2 and the 246-MP8 are both going to use 2 quarts. However, for the MP1222, the MP12225, the MP126-NQG, the MP1625, the MP1626-NQF, and the MP3023-NQH are all going to use 1.6 quarts. The BW4485NR3 is going to use 1.5 quarts. Now for the cooling system. For the V6 engines, we're going to use 16.5 quarts. For the V8 engines, without rear AC, you're going to use 16.9 quarts. If you have rear AC and you have the 4.8 liter, you're going to use 17.8 quarts. For the 5.3 liter, you're going to use 18.3 quarts, and for the 6 liter, you're going to use 17.4. Note, all capacities are approximate. Add as necessary to bring to appropriate level. Another note, cooling system capacities vary depending on engine/transmission package, radiator and AC system type, and coolant as necessary to bring to appropriate level. Add coolant as necessary to bring to appropriate level. For the brakes, onto brakes. The disc brake pad wear limit is 3/32 of an inch. The drum brake shoe wear limit is 1/16 of an inch. The parking brake shoe wear limit is also 1/16 of an inch. On to ignition system. For the spark plug type, for the V6 engine, you can use AC Delco 41-993 or equivalent. For the V8 engines, you're going to use AC Delco 41985 or equivalent. You're going to use AC Delco 41-985 or equivalent. For spark plug gaps on the V6, you're going to have 0.06 inch. For the V8 engines, you're going to have 0.04 inch. And now for the firing order, for the V6 engines, you'll start with cylinder 1 and go on to 6, 5, 4, 3, and 2. For the V8 engines, you're going to go 1, 8, 7, 2, 6, 5, 4, 3. Alright, now for some torque specifications. Just for note, 1 foot-pound of torque is equivalent to 12 inch-pounds of torque. Torque values below approximately 15 pounds are expressed in inch-pounds, since most foot-pound torque wrenches are not accurate at these smaller values. Your spark plugs, they're going to be 132 inch-pounds. Your wheel lug nuts, 140. For the automatic transmission, the 4L60E, 4L65E, and 4L70E. The pan bolts, 97 inch-pounds. The drain plug, 156 inch-pounds. The 6L50, 6L80, and 6L90 pan bolts are going to be 80 inch-pounds. Then the engine oil drain plug will be 18. The engine oil drain plug will be 18 foot-pounds. Let's see here. A transfer case drain/fill plug. EMP manufacturer, 156 inch-pounds. NVG manufacturer, 15 pounds. 15 foot-pounds. The NVG manufacturer will be 15 foot-pounds. The BW manufacturer, that'll be 18 foot-pounds. differential drain and fill plugs. The front differential, that's to be 24 foot-pounds. The rear differential, the drain plug. On the rear differential, the drain plug, if equipped, will be 24 foot-pounds. The fill plug will also be 24 foot-pounds. The differential cover bolts will be 30. Continuing Chapter 1, we have our maintenance schedule. The following maintenance intervals are based on the assumption that the vehicle owner will be doing the maintenance or service work as opposed to having a dealer service department do the work. The following maintenance intervals are based on assumption that the vehicle owner will be doing the maintenance or service work as opposed to having a dealer service department do the work. These are the minimum maintenance intervals recommended by the factory for vehicles that are driven daily. You wish to keep your vehicle in peak condition at all times. You may wish to perform some of these procedures even more often, because frequent maintenance enhances the efficiency, performance, and resale value of your car. We encourage you to do so. If you drive in dusty areas, tow a trailer, idle or drive at low speeds for extended periods, or drive for short distances, that's less than 4 miles, in below freezing temperatures, shorter intervals are also recommended. When the vehicle is new, follow the maintenance schedule to the letter. Record the maintenance performed in your own owner's manual, and keep all records to protect the new vehicle warranty. In many cases, the initial maintenance check is done at no cost to the owner. Check with your dealer's service department for more information. Every 200 miles or weekly, whichever comes first, you want to check the engine oil level, check the coolant level, check the windshield washer fluid level, check the brake and clutch fluid levels, and check the tires and tire pressures. Every 3,000 miles or 3 months, whichever comes first, all items listed above, plus check the power steering fluid level, check the automatic transmission fluid level, and change the engine oil and filter. Now every 6,000 miles or 6 months, whichever comes first, all items listed above, plus check the seat belts, inspect the windshield wiper blades, check and service the battery, check the engine drive belt, inspect underhood hoses, check the cooling system, and rotate the tires. Every 15,000 miles or 12 months, whichever comes first, all items listed above, plus check the differential lubricant level in the front, if you have a 4x4, and the rear axles. Lubricate the chassis, check the fuel system, check the brake system, check the exhaust system, check the transfer case lubricant level, check the air filter. Now every 30,000 miles or 30 months, whichever comes first. Once again, all items listed above, plus change the brake fluid, replace the air filter, replace the spark plugs, service the cooling system, check the steering, suspension, and drive axle boots, change the automatic transmission fluid and filter. Now every 60,000 miles or 48 months, whichever comes first, we're going to change the transfer case lubricant, change the differential lubricant, replace the positive crankcase ventilation valve. And every 100,000 miles or 60 months, whichever comes first, replace the spark plug, inspect/replace the spark plug wires, service the cooling system. That's it. Alright, now for tune-up general information. The term tune-up is used in this manual to represent a combination of individual operations, rather than one specific procedure that will maintain a gasoline engine in proper tune. If, from the time the vehicle is new, the routine maintenance schedule is followed closely and frequent checks are made of fluid levels and high wear items, as suggested throughout this manual, the engine will be kept in relatively good running condition, and the need for additional work will be minimized. More likely than not, however, there may be times when the engine is running poorly due to lack of regular maintenance. This is even more likely if a used vehicle, which has not received regular and frequent maintenance checks, is purchased. In such cases, an engine tune-up will be needed outside of the regular routine maintenance intervals. The first step in any tune-up diagnostic procedure to help correct a poor running engine is a cylinder compression check. A compression check, see Chapter 2C, will help determine the condition of internal engine components and should be used as a guide for tune-up and repair procedures. If, for instance, the compression check indicates serious internal engine wear, a conventional tune-up won't improve the performance of the engine and would be a waste of time and money. Because of its importance, the compression check should be done by someone with the proper equipment and the knowledge to use it properly. The following procedures are those most often needed to bring a generally poor running engine back into a proper state of tune. For a minor tune-up, you're going to check all engine-related fluids, clean, inspect, and test the battery, check the drive belt, check all underhood hoses, check the cooling system, check the air filter, and inspect the spark plug wires. For a major tune-up, all items listed under minor tune-ups plus replace the air filter, replace the spark plug, replace the PCV valve, replace the spark plug wires, check the ignition system, and check the charging system. For fluid level checks, this is every 250 miles or weekly. For engine oil, the engine oil level is checked with a dipstick that extends through a tube and into the oil pan at the bottom of the engine. The oil level should be checked before the vehicle has been driven, or about 5 minutes after the engine has been shut off. If the oil is checked immediately after driving the vehicle, some of the oil will remain in the upper engine components, If the oil is checked immediately after driving the vehicle, some of the oil will remain in the upper engine components, resulting in an inaccurate reading on the dipstick. 4. Pull the dipstick out of the tube and wipe all the oil from the end. Let's start this whole section over. I think I botched it. Engine oil. Okay, starts with number 2. For fluid level checks, number 1, fluids are an essential part of the lubrication, cooling, brake, clutch, and windshield washer systems. Because the fluids gradually become depleted and or contaminated during normal operations of the vehicle, they must be periodically replenished. 2. Engine oil. The engine oil level is checked with a dipstick that extends through a tube and into the oil pan at the bottom of the engine. 3. The oil level should be checked before the vehicle has been driven, or about 5 minutes after the engine has been shut off. If the oil is checked immediately after driving the vehicle, some of the oil will remain in the upper engine compartments. Some of the engine oil will remain in the upper engine components, resulting in an inaccurate reading on the dipstick. 4. Pull the dipstick out of the tube and wipe all the oil from the end with a clean rag or paper towel. Insert the clean dipstick all the way back into the tube, then pull it out again. Note the oil at the end of the dipstick. Add oil as necessary to keep the level between the cross-hatched area on the dipstick. 5. Do not overfill the engine by adding too much oil, since this may result in oil-fouled spark plugs, oil leaks, or oil seal failures. Number 6. Oil is added to the engine after unscrewing a cap from the valve cover. 7. Checking the oil level is an important preventative maintenance step. A consistently low oil level indicates oil leakage through damaged seals, defective gaskets, or past-worn rings or valve guides. If the oil looks milky or has water droplets in it, the cylinder head gasket may be blown, or the heads. This is a cross page. If the oil looks milky or has water droplets in it, the cylinder head gasket may have If the oil looks milky or has water droplets in it, the cylinder head gasket may be blown on the heads, or I messed it up again. If the oil looks milky or has water droplets in it, the cylinder head gasket may be blown, or the head or block may be cracked. The engine should be checked immediately. The condition of the oil should also be checked. Whenever you're Whenever you check the oil level, slide your thumb and index finger up the dipstick. Whenever you check the oil level, slide your thumb and index finger up the dipstick before wiping off the oil. If you see small dirt or metal particles clinging to the dipstick, the oil should be changed. For the engine coolant. Great. All vehicles covered by this manual are equipped with a pressurized coolant expansion tank located at the right side of the engine coolant department. All vehicles covered by this manual are equipped with a pressurized coolant expansion tank located at the right side of the engine compartment and connected by hoses to the radiator and cooling system. The coolant level in the expansion tank should be checked regularly. Unscrew the cap and add coolant until it's up to the COLD, which is cold. Wow, I'm a genius. To add coolant, slowly unscrew the cap. Then add coolant until it is up to the cold mark. Install the cap, start the engine, and run it at approximately 2,000 RPM until the coolant temperature gauge reads approximately 195 degrees Fahrenheit. If the coolant level drops, let the engine cool, and add more until it is up to the cold mark. In order to maintain the proper ratio of antifreeze and water, always top up the coolant levels with the correct mixture. Do not use rust inhibitors or additives. If the coolant level drops consistently, there may be a leak in the system. Inspect the radiator, hoses, pressure cap, drain plugs, and water pump. If no leaks are noted, have the pressure cap tested by a service technician. Check the condition of the coolant as well. It should be relatively clear. If it is brown or rust-colored, the system should be drained, flushed, and refilled, even if the coolant appears to be normal. The corrosion inhibitors wear out, so it must be replaced at the specified intervals. If the system is filled with standard green coolant/water, it must be flushed and replaced more frequently than if the original Dexcool coolant is retained. For windshield washer fluid. Fluid for the windshield washer system is located in a plastic reservoir in the left side of the engine compartment. In milder climates, plain water can be used in the reservoir, but it should be kept no more than 2/3 full to allow for expansion if the water freezes. In colder climates, use windshield washer system antifreeze, available at any auto parts store, to lower the freezing point of fluid. Mix the antifreeze with water in accordance with the manufacturer directions on the container. To help prevent icing in cold weather, warm the windshield with the defroster before using the washer. For the battery electrolyte, these vehicles are equipped with a battery which is permanently sealed, except for vent holes, and has no filler caps. Water doesn't have to be added to these batteries at any time. If a maintenance type battery is installed, the caps on the top of the battery should be removed periodically to check for a low electrolyte level. This check is most critical during the warm summer months. Add only distilled water to any battery. Now for brake fluid. The brake master cylinder is mounted on the upper left of the engine compartment firewall. The translucent plastic reservoir allows the fluid inside to be checked without removing the cap. Be sure to wipe the top of reservoir cap with a clean rag to prevent contamination of the brake system before removing the cover. When adding fluid, pour it carefully into the reservoir to avoid spilling it on surrounding painted surfaces. Be sure the specified fluid is used, since mixing different types of brake fluid can cause damage to the system. At this time, the fluid and master cylinder can be inspected for contamination. The system should be drained and refilled if deposits, dirt particles, or water droplets are seen in the fluid. After filling the reservoir to the proper level, make sure the cover or cap is on tight to prevent fluid leaks. The The brake fluid level in the master cylinder will drop slightly as the pads at the front wheels wear down during normal operation. If the master cylinder requires repeated additions to keep it at the proper level, it's an indication of leakage in the brake system, which should be corrected immediately. Check all brake lines and connections. Upon checking the master cylinder fluid levels, you discover the reservoir is empty or nearly empty. The brake system should be bled and thoroughly inspected. On to tire and tire pressure checks. Periodic inspection of the tires may spare you the inconvenience of being stranded with a flat tire. It can also provide you with vital information regarding possible problems in the steering and suspension systems before major damage occurs. The original tires on this vehicle are equipped with half-inch wide wear bands that will appear when the tread depth reaches 1/16 inch, at which point the tires can be considered worn out. Tread wear can be monitored with a simple, inexpensive device known as a tread depth indicator. Note any abnormal tread wear. Tread pattern irregularities such as cupping, flat spots, and more wear on one side than the other are indications of front-end alignment and/or balance problems. If any of these conditions are noted, take the vehicle to a tire shop or service station to correct the problem. Look closely for cuts, punctures, and embedded nails or tacks. Sometimes a tire will hold air pressure for a short time or leak down very slowly after a nail has embedded itself in the tread. If the slow leak persists, check the valve stem core to make sure it's tight. Examine the tread for an object that may have embedded itself in the tire or for a plug that may have begun to leak. If a puncture is suspected, it can be easily verified by spraying a solution of soapy water onto the punctured area. The soapy solution will bubble if there's a leak. Unless the puncture is unusually large, tire shop or service station can usually repair the tire. Carefully inspect the inner sidewall of each tire for evidence of brake fluid leakage. If you see any, inspect the brakes immediately. Correct air pressure adds miles to the lifespan of the tires, improves mileage, and enhances overall ride quality. Tire pressure cannot be accurately estimated by looking at a tire, especially if it's a radial. Tire pressure gauge is essential. Keep an accurate gauge in the vehicle. Pressure gauge attached to the nozzle of air hose at gas stations are often inaccurate. Always check tire pressure when the tires are cold. Cold in this case means the vehicle has not been driven over a mile in 3 hours. Cold in this case means the vehicle has not been driven over a mile in the 3 hours preceding a tire pressure check. A pressure rise of 4 to 8 pounds is not uncommon once the tires are warm. Unscrew the valve cap protruding from the wheel or hubcap and push the gauge firmly onto the valve stem. Note the reading on the gauge and compare the figure to the recommended tire pressure shown on the placard on the driver's side door pillar. Be sure to reinstall the valve cap to keep dirt and moisture out of the valve stem mechanism. Check all 4 tires and, if necessary, add enough air to bring them up to the recommended pressure. Don't forget to keep spare tire inflated to the specific pressure. Oh my gosh. 1. The power steering system relies on fluid which may, over a period of time, require replenishing. On all models, the fluid reservoir for the power steering pump is located on the pump body at the front of the engine. 3. For the check, the front wheel should be pointed straight ahead and the engine should be off. 4. Use a clean rag to wipe off the reservoir cap and the area around the cap. This will help prevent any foreign matter from entering the reservoir during the check. 5. Twist off the cap and check the temperature of the fluid at the end of the dipstick with your finger. 6. Wipe off the fluid with the clean rag. Reinsert the dipstick, then withdraw it and read the fluid level. The fluid level should be at the proper level, depending on whether it was checked hot or cold. Never allow the fluid level to drop below the lower mark on the dipstick. 7. If additional fluid is required, pour the specific type into the reservoir, a little at a time to avoid overfilling. 8. If the reservoir requires frequent fluid additions, all power steering hoses, hose connections, steering gear, and the power steering pump should be carefully checked for leaks. Alright, on to automatic transmission fluid level check. This is every 3,000 miles or 3 months as well. There's a note here. On some models, the Driver's Information Center, the DIC, on the instrument panel is capable of displaying the transmission fluid temperature. Before starting this procedure, check it to see if the DIC in your vehicle can do this. With the engine running and in park, press the trip/fuel button or the trip odometer reset button and see if trans temp can be displayed. If so, you'll do this in step 3. Alright, step 1. The automatic transmission fluid level should be carefully maintained. Low fluid level can lead to slipping or loss of drive, while overfilling can cause foaming. Either condition can damage the transmission. With the parking brake set, start the engine, then move the shift lever through all the gear ranges, ending in park. The fluid level must be checked with the vehicle level and the engine running at idle. Note, incorrect fluid level readings will result in if the vehicle has just been driven at high speeds for an extended period, in hot weather and city traffic, or if it has been pulling a trailer. If any of these conditions apply, wait until the fluid is cooled about 30 minutes. If the DIC in your, or on step 3, if the DIC in your vehicle is capable of reading the temperature of the transmission fluid, display the value on the DIC now. If the fluid temperature is between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll be using the cold markings on the dipstick. If it's between 160 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll be using the hot markings on the dipstick. If it's above 200 degrees Fahrenheit, wait until the fluid has cooled back down and falls into the hot temperature range. If it's between 90 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit, operate the vehicle until warms up to the hot range. Note, if the DIC in your vehicle can't display the transmission fluid temperature, proceed to the next step. You'll have to estimate the temperature of the fluid based on recent operation. 4. With the transmission at normal operating temperature, remove the dipstick from the filler tube. The dipstick is located at the rear of the engine compartment, on the passenger side. 5. Wipe the fluid from the dipstick with a clean rag and push it back into the filler tube until the cup seats. 6. Pull the dipstick out again and note the fluid level. 7. If the fluid is cold or slightly warm, 80 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the level should be in the cold range on the dipstick. If it's hot, 160 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, the level should be in the crosshatched hot range. If additional fluid is required, add it into the dipstick tube using a funnel. Add the fluid a little at a time and keep checking the level until it's correct. It is important to not overfill the transmission. Step 8. The condition of the fluid should also be checked along with the level. If the fluid at the end of the dipstick is a dark reddish brown color, or if it smells burned, it should be changed. If you're in doubt about the condition of the fluid, purchase some new fluid and compare the two color and smell. On to engine oil and filter change. Note, these vehicles are equipped with an oil life indicator system that illuminates a light or message on the instrument panel when the system deems it's necessary to change the oil. A number of factors are taken into consideration to determine when the oil should be considered worn out. Generally, the system will allow the vehicle to accumulate more miles between oil changes than the traditional 3,000 mile interval. But we believe that frequent oil changes are cheap insurance and will prolong engine life. If you do decide not to change engine oil every 3,000 miles and rely on the oil life indicator instead, make sure you do not exceed 7,500 miles before the oil is changed, regardless of what the oil life indicator shows. Alright, step 1. Frequent oil changes are the most important preventative maintenance procedure that can be done by the home mechanic. As engine oil ages, it becomes diluted and contaminated, which leads to premature engine wear. Although some sources recommend oil filter changes every other oil change, we feel that the minimal cost of an oil filter and the relative ease with which it is installed dictate that a new filter be installed every time the oil is changed. 3. Gather together all necessary tools and materials before beginning with the procedure. You should also have plenty of clean rags and newspapers handy to mop up any spills. 4. Warm the engine to normal operating temperature. If the new oil or any tools are needed, use this warm-up time to gather everything necessary for the job. The correct type of oil for your application can be found in recommended lubricants and fluids in the chapter specifications. Number 5. Raise the vehicle and support it securely on jack stands. Warning, do not work under a vehicle which is supported only by a jack. 6. If this is your first oil change, familiarize yourself with the locations of the oil drain plug and the oil filter. Set the drain pan under the drain plug. Keep in mind that the oil will initially flow from the pan with some force. Position the pan accordingly. 8. Being careful not to touch any of the hot exhaust components, use a wrench to remove the drain plug near the bottom of the oil pan. Depending on how hot the oil is, you might want to wear gloves while unscrewing the plug the final few turns. Number 9. After the oil is drained, wipe off the drain plug with a clean rag. Clean the area around the drain plug opening and reinstall the plug. Tighten the plug securely with the wrench. If a torque wrench is available, use it to tighten the plug to the torque listed in the chapter's specifications. Number 10. Move the drain pan into position under the oil filter, then use the oil filter wrench to loosen the oil filter. 11. Completely unscrew the old filter. Be careful, it's full of oil. Empty the oil inside the filter into the drain pan. 12. Compare the old filter with the new one to make sure that they're the same. 13. Clean the area where the oil filter mounts to the engine. Check the oil filter to make sure the rubber gasket isn't stuck to the engine. If the gasket is stuck to the engine, use a flashlight if necessary. Remove it. Number 14. Apply a light coat of clean oil to the rubber gasket on the new oil filter. Number 15. Attach the new filter to the engine. Following the tightening directions printed on the filter canister or packaging box. Most filter manufacturers recommend against using a filter wrench due to the possibility of over-tightening and damaging to the seal. Number 16. Lower the vehicle. Open the hood and locate the oil filler cap. 17. Refer to the engine oil capacity in this chapter's specifications and add the proper amount of fresh oil into the engine. Wait a few minutes to allow the oil to drain into the pan. Then check the level on the oil dipstick. If the oil level is above the hatched area, start the engine and allow the new oil to circulate. Number 18. Run the engine for only about a minute and then shut it off. Immediately look under the vehicle and check for leaks at the oil pan drain plug and around the oil filter. 19. Wait about 5 minutes, then recheck the level on the dipstick. Add more oil as necessary. 20. During the first few trips after an oil change, make it a point to check frequently for leaks and proper oil level. 21. The old oil drain from the engine cannot be reused in its present state and should be disposed of. Check with your local auto parts store, disposal facility, or environmental agency to see if they will accept the oil for recycling. After the oil is cooled, it can be drained into a container for transport to one of these disposal sites. Don't dispose of the oil by pouring it on the ground or down a drain. For the oil life monitor, 22. The oil life monitor is a function of the PCM that tracks engine operating temperatures and RPM. If the PCM determines that your engine oil has been used long enough, an indicator that shows change oil soon will light on the instrument panel. 23. When you change your engine oil and filter, whether you change it at the interval recommended in this chapter or only when the light comes on, you'll have to reset the system to make the indicator go out and allow the system to accurately calculate when the next oil change is due. For vehicles without a driver information center, the DIC, 24. To reset, turn the ignition key to the run position, not the start position, with the engine off. Then fully depress and let up the accelerator pedal 3 times within a 5-second period. Turn the key off, Then start the engine. If the change engine oil soon message still appears, repeat the resetting procedure. Vehicles equipped with a DIC. To reset, turn the ignition key to the run position, not start, again, with the engine off. Then press the DIC vehicle information button. To display the oil life left / hold set to reset or oil life remaining. Well, let's try that again. To reset, turn the ignition key to the run position, not start, with the engine off. Then press the DIC vehicle information button to display the oil life left / hold set to reset or oil life remaining message on the DIC. Depending on model, press the set / reset button or the odometer trip reset button if your DIC doesn't have buttons, until 99 or 100%, depending on the model, is displayed on the DIC. The system will chime 3 times, then the change in oil soon message will go out. Turn the key off. After a minute, start the engine. If the change engine oil soon message comes back on, repeat the procedure. On to seatbelt checks. These are every 6,000 miles or 6 months. 1. Check seatbelts, buckles, latch plates, and guide loops for obvious damage and signs of wear. 2. Where the seatbelt receptacle bolts to the floor of the vehicle, check that the bolts are secure. See if the seatbelt reminder light comes on when the key is turned on, to the run or start position. A chime should also sound. On to the wiper blade inspections and replacement, every 6,000 miles or 6 months. The windshield wiper blade elements should be checked periodically for cracks and deterioration. 2. Lift the wiper blade assembly away from the glass. 3. Squeeze both wiper blade release tabs together, then rotate away and unhook the blade from the arm. 4. Compare the new blade with the old for length, design, etc. 5. Install the new blade by reversing the removal procedure. 6. Check to be sure the wiper blade is properly secured. Then wet the windshield and test for proper operation. Now for battery check maintenance and charging. Once again, every 6,000 miles or 6 months. 1. A routine preventative maintenance program for the battery in your vehicle is the only way to ensure quick and reliable starts. But before performing any battery maintenance, make sure that you have the proper equipment necessary to work safely around the battery. 2. There are also several precautions that should be taken whenever battery maintenance is performed. Before servicing the battery, always turn the engine and all accessories off and disconnect the cable from the negative terminal of the battery. 3. The battery produces hydrogen gas, which is both flammable and explosive. Never create a spark, smoke, or light a match around the battery. Always charge the battery in a ventilated area. 4. Electrolyte contains poisonous and corrosive sulfuric acid. Do not allow it to get in your eyes, on your skin, or on your clothes. Never ingest it. Wear protective safety glasses when working near the battery. Keep children away from the battery. 5. Note the external condition of the battery. If the positive terminal and cable clamp on your vehicle's battery is equipped with a rubber protector, make sure that it is not torn or damaged. It should completely cover the terminal. Look for any corroded or loose connections, cracks in the case, or cover or loose hold-down clamps. Also check the entire length of each cable for cracks and frayed conductors. Six. If corrosion, which looks like white, fluffy deposit, is evident, particularly around the terminals, the battery should be removed for cleaning. Loosen the cable bolts with a wrench, being careful to remove the ground cable first and slide them off the terminals. Then disconnect the hold-down clamp bolt and nut. Remove the clamp and lift the battery from the engine compartment. 7. Clean the cable ends thoroughly with a battery brush or a terminal cleaner and a solution of warm water and baking soda. Wash the terminals and the side of the battery case with the same solution, but make sure that the solution does not get into the battery. When cleaning the cables, terminals, and battery case, wear safety goggles and rubber gloves to prevent any solution from coming in contact with your eyes or hands. Wear old clothes too. Even diluted sulfuric acid splashed onto clothes will burn holes in them. If the terminals have been corroded, clean them up with a terminal cleaner. Thoroughly wash all cleaned areas with plain water. 8. Make sure that the battery tray is in good condition and the hold-down clamp bolts are tight. If the battery is removed from the tray, make sure no part remains in the bottom of the tray when the battery is reinstalled. When reinstalling the hold-down clamp bolts, do not over-tighten them. 9. Any metal part of the vehicle damaged by corrosion should be covered with a zinc-based primer, then painted. 10. Information on removing and installing the battery can be found in Chapter 5. Information on jump starting can be found at the front of this manual. For more detailed battery checking procedures, refer to the Haynes Automotive Electrical Manual. Right, now for charging the battery. Note, the manufacturer recommends the battery be removed from the vehicle for charging because the gas that escapes during this procedure can damage the paint. Fast charging with the battery cables connected can result in damage to the electrical system. Slow rate charging is the best way to restore a battery that's discharged to the point where it will not start the engine. It's also a good way to maintain the battery charge in a vehicle that's only driven a few miles between starts. Maintaining the battery charge is particularly important in the winter when the battery must work harder to start the engine and electrical accessories that drain the battery are in greater use. The best to use is a 1 or 2 amp battery charger, sometimes called a trickle charger. They are the safest and put the least strain on the battery. They are also the least expensive. For a faster charge, you can use a higher amperature charger, but don't use one rated more than 1/10 the amp-hour rating of the battery. Rapid boost charges that claim to restore the power of the battery in 1 to 2 hours are hardest on the battery and can damage batteries not in good condition. This type of charger should only be used in emergency situations. The average time necessary to charge a battery should be listed in the instructions that come with the charger. As a general rule, a trickle charger will charge a battery in 12 to 16 hours. Remove all the cell caps and cover the holes with a clean cloth to prevent splattering electrolyte. Disconnect the negative battery cable and hook the battery charger cable clamps up to the battery posts, positive to positive, negative to negative. Then plug in the charger. Make sure it is set at 12 volts if it has a selector switch. If you're using a charger with a rate higher than 2 amps, check the battery regularly. Check the battery regularly during charging to make sure it doesn't overheat. If you're using a trickle charger, you can safely let the battery charge overnight, after you've checked it regularly for the first couple of hours. If the battery has removable cell caps, measure the specific gravity with a hydrometer every hour during the last few hours of the charging cycle. Hydrometers are available inexpensively from auto parts stores. Follow the instructions that come with the hydrometer. Consider the battery charged when there's no change in the specific gravity reading for 2 hours and the electrolyte in the cells is gassing freely. The specific gravity reading from each cell should be very close to the others. If not, the battery probably has a bad cell. Some batteries with sealed tops have built-in hydrometers on the top that indicate the state of the charge by the color displayed in the hydrometer window. Normally, a bright-colored hydrometer indicates a full charge, and a dark hydrometer indicates the battery still needs charging. If the battery has a sealed top and no built-in hydrometer, you can hook up a digital voltmeter across the battery terminals to check the charge. A fully charged battery should read 12.5 volts or higher. Further information on the battery and jump starting can be found in Chapter 5 and at the front of this manual. Alright, now for the drive belt check, adjustment, and replacement every 6,000 miles or 6 months. 1. A serpentine belt is located at the front of the engine and plays an important role in the overall operation of the engine and its components. Due to its function and material makeup, the belt is prone to wear and should be periodically inspected. The serpentine belt drives the alternator, power steering pump, water pump, and air conditioner compressor. Note, V6 models have one belt, V8 models have one main belt and a second inner belt just for the air conditioner compressor. 2. With the engine off, open the hood and use your fingers to move along the belt, checking for cracks and separation of the belt plies. Also check for fraying and glazing, which gives the belt a shiny appearance. Both sides of the belt should be inspected, which means you will have to twist the belt to check the underside. 3. Check the underside of the belt. They should be all the same depth, with none of the surfaces uneven. 4. The tension of the belt is maintained by a spring-loaded tensioner assembly and isn't adjustable. The belt should be replaced when the mark on the removable part of the tensioner moves out of the acceptable range on the stationary part of the tensioner. A couple extra words in there. 5. To replace the belt, rotate the tensioner to release belt tension. Dyslexia is getting the best of me. Note, before removing the belt, make a sketch of how it is routed around the pulleys if you don't think you can remember. 6. Remove the belt from the tensioner and auxiliary components and slowly release the tension. 7. Route the new belt over the various pulleys, again rotating the tensioner to allow the belt to be installed. Then release the belt tensioner. For tensioner replacement. 8. To replace a tensioner that has lost its spring tension, exhibits binding, or has a worn-out pulley/bearing, remove the mounting bolts. 9. Installation is the reverse of the removal procedure. Imagine that. Alright, now for underhood hose check and replacement. Once again, this is every 6,000 miles or 6 months, whichever comes first. 1. High temperatures in the engine compartment can cause the deterioration of the rubber and plastic hoses used for engine, accessory, and emission systems operation. Periodic inspection should be made for cracks, loose clamps, material hardening, and leaks. Information specific to the cooling system hoses can be found in section 14. 2. Some, but not all, hoses are secured to their fitting with clamps. Where clamps are used, check to be sure they haven't lost their tension, allowing the hose to leak. If clamps aren't used, make sure the hose has not expanded and or hardened where it slips over the fitting, allowing it to leak. For vacuum hoses, 3. It's quite common for vacuum hoses, especially those in the emission system, to be color-coded or identified by colored stripes molded into them. Various systems require hoses with different wall thickness, collapse resistance, and temperature resistance. When replacing hoses, be sure the new ones are made of the same material. 4. Often the only effective way to check a hose is to remove it completely from the vehicle. If more than one hose is removed, be sure to label the hoses and fittings to ensure correct installation. 5. When checking vacuum hoses, be sure to include any plastic T-fittings in the check inspection. Inspect the fittings for cracks and the hose where it fits over the fitting for distortion, which could cause leakage. 6. A small piece of vacuum hose, 1/4 inch inside diameter, can be used as a stethoscope to detect vacuum leaks. Hold one end of the hose to your ear with a probe around vacuum hose and fittings. Okay, I see. Hold one end of the hose to your ear and probe around vacuum hoses and fittings, listening for the hissing sound characteristics of a vacuum leak. That's really smart. I'm going to try that one. Alright, now we're on to the fuel hose. So 7. Check all rubber fuel lines for deterioration and chafing. Check especially for cracks in areas where the hose bends and just before fittings, such as where a hose attaches to the fuel filter and fuel injection unit. 8. High-quality fuel line, specifically designed for high-pressure fuel injection applications, must be used for fuel line replacement. Never, under any circumstances, use regular fuel line. unreinforced vacuum line, clear plastic tubing, or water hose for fuel lines. 9. Spring type, pinch clamps. Clamps are commonly used on fuel lines. These clamps often lose their tension over a period of time and can be sprung during removal. Replace all spring type clamps with screw clamps whenever a hose is replaced. For metal lines. 10. Sections of metal line are routed along the frame between the fuel tank and the engine. Check careful to be sure the line has not been bent or crimped and no cracks have started in the line. 11. If a section of metal fuel line must be replaced, only seamless steel tubing should be used, since copper and aluminum tubing don't have the strength necessary to withstand normal engine vibration. 12. Check the metal brake lines where they enter the master cylinder and brake proper proportioning unit for cracks in the lines or loose fittings. Any signs of brake fluid leakage calls for an immediate and thorough inspection of the brake system. On to the cooling system check. Once again, every 6,000 miles or 6 months. 1. Many major engine failures can be attributed to a failure cooling system through a faulty cooling system. The cooling system also cools the transmission fluid and thus plays an important role in prolonging transmission life. 2. The cooling system should be checked with the engine cold. Do this before a vehicle is driven for the day or after it has been shut off for at least 3 hours. 3. Remove the coolant pressure cap on the expansion tank by slowly unscrewing it. If you hear any hissing sound, indicating there is still pressure in the system, wait until it stops. Thoroughly clean the cap, inside and out, with clean water. Also clean the filler neck on the expansion tank. All traces of corrosion should be removed. The coolant inside the expansion tank should be relatively transparent. If it is rust-colored, the system should be drained and refilled. If the coolant level is not up to the cold mark, add additional antifreeze/coolant mixture. 4. Carefully check the large upper and lower radiator hoses along with any smaller diameter heater hoses that run from the engine to the firewall. Inspect each hose along its entire length, replacing any hose that is cracked, swollen, or shows signs of deterioration. Cracks may become more apparent if the hose is squeezed. 5. Make sure all hose connections are tight. A leak in the cooling system will usually show up as white or rust-colored deposits on the area adjoining the leak. If wire-type clamps are used at the ends of the hoses, it may be wise to replace them with more secure screw-type clamps. 6. Use compressed air or a soft brush to remove bugs, leaves, etc. from the front of the radiator or air conditioning condenser. Be careful not to damage the delicate cooling fins or cut yourself on them. 7. Every other inspection, or at the first indication of cooling system problems, have the cap and system pressure tested. If you don't have a pressure tester, most gas stations and repair shops will do this for a minimal charge. I'm going to ask for that next time I walk into Come and Go. And now, overheat protection operating mode. Models with V8 engines have a system to protect the engine from damage caused by severe overheating. When the computer senses an overheat condition, an instrument panel warning light comes on that says reduced power. In this mode, the computer switches the firing of the individual coils on and off at each cylinder to allow cooling cycles between the firing cylinders. The engine will have a dramatic loss of power, but will allow the vehicle to operate in an emergency. 9. If this light is on, find a safe place to get off the road as soon as possible and allow the engine to cool thoroughly. 10. Check the coolant level and inspect for a split hose or other obvious signs of coolant leakage. 11. The engine oil will be ruined after this mode has operated, since unburned fuel will get into the oil. After fixing the overheating problem, change the oil and filter right away and reset the oil life monitor. Alright, on to tire rotation. This again is every 6,000 miles or 6 months. 1. The tire should be rotated at the specified intervals and whenever uneven wear is noticed. 2. Tires must be rotated in the recommended pattern. 3. Well, let's go ahead and look at that pattern. It is left front to left rear to right front to right rear, and right rear to left front. 3. Refer to the information in jacking and towing at the front of this manual for the proper procedures to follow when raising the vehicle and changing a tire. If the brakes are to be checked, don't apply the parking brake as stated. Make sure the tires are blocked to prevent the vehicle from rolling as it's raised. 4. Preferably, the entire vehicle should be raised at the same time. This can be done on a hoist or by jacking up each corner, then lowering the vehicle onto jack stands placed under the frame rails. Always use 4 jack stands and make sure the vehicle is safely supported. 5. After rotation, check and adjust the tire pressures as necessary. Tighten the lug nuts to the torque listed in this chapter's specifications. Now, differential lubricant level check every 15,000 miles or 12 months. And now we're moving up. Alright, note, four-wheel drive vehicles have 2 differentials, one in the center of each axle. Four-wheel drive vehicles have 1 differential in the center of the rear axle. On four-wheel drive vehicles, be sure to check the lubricant level in both differentials. One, if the vehicle is raised to gain access to the plug, be sure to support it safely on jack stands. Do not crawl into the vehicle when only the jack supports it. Be sure the vehicle is level or the check may not be accurate. If you're checking the front differential lubricant, remove the splash shield or lock guard if equipped. 2. Remove the plug from the filler hole in the differential housing or cover. 3. The lubricant level should be within the specified range from the bottom of the filler hole. These are those specifications. For the front axle, it's 0 to 1/4 inch. For the rear axle, we got multiple rear axle options. For the 8.6 inch axle, it'll be 3/64 to 3/4 inch. For the 9.5 inch axle, it'll be 5/8 to 1 9/16 inch. For the 10.5 inch axle, it'll be 0 to 3/8 inch. And for the 11.5 inch axle, it'll be 5/8 to 3/4 inch. If the level is low, use a pump or squeeze bottle to add the recommended lubricant until it is up to the proper level. Install the plug into the filler hole, tighten it to the torque listed in this chapter's specifications. Alright, now for chassis lubrication, every 15,000 miles or 12 months. 1. Refer to recommended lubricants and fluids in this chapter's specifications to obtain the necessary grease, etc. You'll also need a grease gun. If a suspension component has no grease fitting in place, this indicates that the part is sealed and does not require periodic lubrication. Some components on four-wheel drive models have fittings that aren't on two-wheel drive models, and vice versa. 2. Look under the vehicle and locate the grease fitting. 3. For easy access under the vehicle, raise it with a jack and place jack stands under the frame. Make sure it's safely supported by the stands. If the wheels are to be removed at this interval for tire rotation or brake inspection, loosen the lug nut slightly while the vehicle is still on the ground. 4. Before beginning, force the grease out of the nozzle to remove the air. Wipe the nozzle with a rag. 5. Remove grease and plenty of clean rags. Follow the vehicle and begin lubricating. 6. Wipe one of the grease fittings clean. Push the nozzle from the other. Pump the gun with other components completely lubricated. On ball joints, stop pumping with rubber sealing is perfect. Do not pump too much grease in the fitting as it could rupture the seal. For all other suspension components, continue pumping grease in the fitting until it oozes out over the joint between the two components. If it escapes from the grease in the nozzle, the fitting is clogged. Or the nozzle is not completely seated on the fitting. Resecure the gun nozzle to the fitting and drag it if necessary. Replace the fitting. 7. Wipe the excess grease from the component and the grease fitting. Repeat the procedure for the grease. 8. Clean the fittings and pump grease. Drive line universal joints. Clean the fitting and pump grease into the drive line universal joint until the grease out of the contact lines. The other U-joints are sealed and do not require lubrication. Also, clean and lubricate the parking brake cable guides and levers. Alright. Fuel system check. This is every 15,000 miles, 12 months as well. 1. If you smell gasoline while driving or after the vehicle has been sitting in the sun, inspect the fuel system immediately. Remove the gas filler cap and inspect for damage and corrosion. The gasket should have an unbroken sealing imprint. If the gasket is damaged or corroded, install a new cap. 3. Inspect the fuel feed and return lines for cracks. Make sure that the connections between the fuel lines and the fuel injection system are tight. 4. If the fuel injectors are visible, look for signs of fuel leakage. Those will be wet spots around any of the injectors. They may need new O-rings. 5. Since some components of the fuel system, the fuel tank, and part of the fuel feed and return lines, for example, are underneath the vehicle, they can be inspected more easily with the vehicle raised on a hoist. If that's not possible, raise the vehicle and support it on jack stands. 6. With the vehicle raised and safely supported, inspect the gas tank and filler neck for punctures, cracks, and other damage. The connection between the filler neck and the tank is particularly critical. Sometimes a rubber filler neck will leak because of loose clamps or deteriorated rubber. Inspect all fuel tank mounting brackets and straps to be sure that the tank is securely attached to the vehicle. Warning: do not under any circumstance try to repair a fuel tank, except the rubber components. A welding torch or any open flame can easily cause fuel vapors inside the tank to explode. 7. Carefully check all rubber hoses and metal lines leading away from the fuel tank. Check the loose connections, deteriorated hoses, crimped lines, and other damage. Repair or replace damaged sections as necessary. 8. The evaporative emissions control system can also be a source of fuel odors. The function on the system is to store fuel vapors from the fuel tank in a charcoal canister until they can be routed to the intake manifold, where they mix with incoming air before being burned in the combustion chambers. That sounds terrible. 9. The most common symptoms of a faulty evaporative emission system is a strong odor of fuel. If the fuel odor has been detected, and you have already checked the areas described above, check the charcoal canister located in the rear of the vehicle and the hose connected to it. Interesting. Alright, I think I'll call it there for this video. I hope you guys listened to this. If you didn't, start over. Thanks for watching, and if this goes over well, or if anybody ever watches this other than my nephews, I'll make another one. And if they watch it, I'll probably make another one anyways, because it was kind of entertaining. So, thank you, and good night.